they had thrown. It could be that. But that's a small percentage of our total water use. I don't know. Was that report in the paper?
Yeah, I don't know where.
I guess I'm trying to do this today. Harbor.
I don't think this is the right one.
No. What is that about?
2023 is a good year for us.
Was there an article about the water survey?
Should write that down. I saw one. It's, my whole thing is like this every time. I promise I know what I'm doing. I mean, I check to make sure. But
You still be happy.
That would be nice. 3% salary increase, that's across the board. So when was the last time they had an increase?
okay.
I mean, okay. Terry's won't pull up here. I gotta see if I can. Okay, what percent? I'm gonna see if I can send him mine. In a part-time position. It shows that his internet is connected.
Usually anything over 20 hours, you can do if it's or can. If it's under 20,
No, not yet.
I think it's come out for us.
Yes, we have. Yes, yes.
If you're an hour back.
I guess we're just gonna. No, we have to do it because that's what we. Maybe Bert can just, I can go grab it and maybe we can talk through it.
What? Already. Thank you.
I'd like to call tonight's meeting to order. I'm sorry for the delay. Please silence your phones. And to open the meeting, I'd like to ask Chief Page if he'd offer the invocation, please. Stand.
Heavenly Father, God, we come to you, Lord, we ask that you be with our members tonight as they discuss the city's business. Lord, we wish that you will be done through all things. God, we watch over all people tonight, keep them safe. God, forgive us the voice that we fail you. We love you. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, on our agenda tonight is the public hearing for the 2020 Annual Drinking Water Quality Consumer Confidence Report. So we'll open the public hearing at 6:03 for public comment, public questions, or any discussion.
You probably all got one of these in the mail from our water department. All our levels of chemicals, lead, copper, disinfection byproducts were well within tolerances, and the water is pure. Everything was within tolerances. So, is there any questions? We each year when we do these test results, It's like we just got through drawing water, and we won't have the test results for that until next year at this time. So this is for last year, and each year we have to, it takes a year. It doesn't take us a year to figure that out. It's just how the state has it scheduled. So anyway, we get, this is for 2020, and next year we'll leave one for 2021. So anybody got any questions?
Okay, well, if not, then we'll close the public hearing at 6:04. Shortest public hearing ever. Items of community interest, the only thing I really have to announce is the upcoming chamber event this Friday night, the Chair Fair. If you're wanting to attend, please find a chamber member to purchase a ticket for the Chair Fair. It's a great event, and it's a fundraiser. Auctioning off the chairs for, some have homemade, some have decorated, some have bought and brought to us. It's usually a great event.
And our next meeting.
Oh, and Sandy wants me to remind you that we will have a meeting Monday night, the 19th. Please expect an extended meeting because there will probably be a workshop after the meeting. Any questions? All right, well, let's move on to the city manager's report.
Happy to report that after all of our work at Kiwanis Park and along Nelson Street along the creek, we have had no flooding, and even this year that we've had a lot of rain, and the creek has held up. Stoney was telling me earlier that the last part of the concrete wall that we're pouring is going to be poured in the next day or two. There's a little bit of work on the north side of the creek, adjacent to Lamb Street, so as soon as we finish that, it'll be done. And it's held up very well in the rains. And a couple of weeks ago, a week ago, whenever it was, we had 2.5 inches of rain at my house in less than an hour, and it held up very well. The guys went and videoed it, and the creek was full. It wouldn't have held any more, but it was full all the way from Highway 59 all the way out to the edge of town. So it has done a good job. Basically what we did is we sped the water up and are getting it out of town faster, so we're not having any flooding problems. Stoney and his guys have been paving. They started and have paved Strong Street and Clay Street. As soon as we finish the work in front here, then they'll start on Massey Street and get that paved. We've laid water lines over there. In your agenda, it's got budget, but I'm going to talk about budget later. So I sat through a webinar today with the Texas Department of Emergency Management about the American Rescue Plan, and we are slated to get $1,267,177.34. Half of it will be paid this summer sometime, and the other half, same amount next year, which would be $633,588.67. Hopefully, I have some plans for that money, and I'll make that known to you later on. But one of my pet projects right now is trying to find the funding to remodel the police building. And that's going to be quite expensive, but I hope when the time comes to decide how we're going to spend it, that you'll remember that. So, and that's it. Any questions?
Okay, well, if not, let's move on to the next item, which is to approve the last meeting minutes. They're presented to you in your packet. And I would entertain a motion to accept as presented. Mr. Gunner?
Second.
Mr. Love? Heffley?
Aye.
Bates? Bell?
Aye.
Higgins?
Aye.
Gunner?
Aye.
And Love?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, so that our next item will be the old business, which is the discussion and action, a second reading of Ordinance 2021-08, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bowie, Texas, amending Chapter 10, Traffic Control by amending Section 10.407, variable speed limits established, adding South Mill Street from Mayor to Highway 287, changing the time to 7 a.m., repealing any conflicting clause, providing for a severability clause, and establishing an effective date. As you all know, this was about extending the school zone hours. So I'd entertain a motion to, thank you, Ms. Higgins. Thank you, Mr. Gunner. Heffley? Aye. Bell?
Aye.
Love?
Aye.
Gunner?
Aye.
Higgins? Aye. And Bates?
Aye.
Thank you. Number 2 on the old business is to consider amending the City of Bowie Community Center rules and regulations tabled from the last meeting on Section 16 alcohol policy. I have a few things to say because I need to clear up some few things from the last meeting. One was, thank you, Councilwoman Higgins, for opening the conversation that we got into that night. Because I don't think we all were really aware of what we were talking about, we did wander astray on the whole subject, but it opened up a whole lot of conversation for us. So we tried to narrow it down this week and bring back to you one item. And I'd like to explain to you why we want this one item changed. On Section D, on Section 716 of alcohol policy, we want to change it to read, if alcohol will be served or allowed on the premises during the user's contractual rental period, the user is required to hire at the user's sole cost and expense one certified peace officer per 150 persons on the premise. We would like to change that to 500. Make the events that are less than 500 not require peace officers. The reason this seems important to us is because it is the only property that the city owns that requires a peace officer. You can get an alcohol waiver for every park, for every part of Pelham Park, but this one building you cannot get a waiver for on the peace officers. So we would like to change that to a 500 person, which would automatically include anything like was discussed at the last meeting, the Bowie Rural Fire Department concerts, or anything that was big enough like the Jim Bowie, which they've been doing security for the last 20 years. So that is the change that we brought to you. That's the change we would like for you to consider tonight.
Well, I'll speak up. I personally think 500 is too many people not to have a police officer there personally. I think, once again, we're at a lot of places when you're out in the open and different things, I don't know how many people that we're having present, but when we had the community center there, and there's usually a lot of people there. But I'm going to say if you serve alcohol, this is just my opinion, one vote, that I think 500 people is a lot of people not to have a peace officer there. So that's just how I feel about it, and I'll take what everybody else says.
So again, you're still saying that we need a peace officer inside that building?
I'm saying it for 500 people, I am.
What it
Or
would
less.
be a negotiating number for you?
I'd be willing to negotiate, but right now what you brought forward to
I know
me was
he was.
500 or less, and I'm personally not in agreement to that. So,
Well,
That's why we're having a discussion.
I've been thinking about this as well, and here's what I think. You got to kind of, well, from the meeting last 2 weeks ago, I stepped back and we've had some discussion, but our department heads are all telling us that we don't need them. And, I mean, we've heard from Clyde, we've heard from Chief Green, and also Bert. I think we need to listen to our department heads, see, and try it out for a year, see what happens. If we have problems out there, we can reevaluate it in a year and go back to what we're doing. But I think we need to, because they're the ones, they listen to the complaints, they hear the complaints of the people, they're out there all the time, they know it better than we do. I think we need to trust them and listen to what they say, and just if it goes south, we reevaluate it.
well, I don't want it to go south for that to reevaluate.
I'm just saying, like,
I
if
would
we have-
rather see half of that, maybe 250 if you're going to try something out there without having it. But 500 is too many. I'm involved in a lot of functions, and 500
Right.
people is a lot of people when you got alcohol related.
Especially in a
So-
limited space.
And so, to me, I want to agree with the department heads and work with them, but I think if we're going to do it, let's try 250 and work our way, then we can figure out and see how things are going. It's kind of like I'd rather move myself up than start having, well, that didn't work out, let's whittle it down a little bit. I think we ought to be smart about this, and I trust the department heads, but I think if we're going to do it, let's cut it down to 250 instead of 500.
I think I could live with the 250 mark as a first step. And then, I mean, if Clyde or Bonnie or anybody comes to us and says, man, things got crazy, man, I want it on the next council meeting.
Clyde, you guys you got anything to say? Was 250 a number, or is it?
Well, like, we have 200 people there, maybe 40 people drinking. Not everybody comes to our.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's the thing about our, that's why.
Like some of those quinceañeras, they get pretty big
Now,
as
that's a
well.
whole different deal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but we can't,
No, but I mean, they'll get 500 people,
Will they?
you know.
Okay.
500 people, yeah. But I'm talking about our concert.
Yes, sir.
Not everybody's drinking. There's a lot of difference between what we do.
I'm not comparing it to that. I'm comparing it to people out there that want to go to an event that has alcohol in it and want to be safe there.
Right. Well, we just never had a problem.
Because have you always had a police officer there though?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
But also, last concert we didn't have an officer.
So this is a policy
Guy, would
change,
you like to
so
explain?
it's not an ordinance. This is a policy change, it's not an ordinance, so we can modify this number tonight. A motion can be made for a modified number. But again, I think you should listen to your department heads. So pick a number that you can at least start out trying it.
I'll make a motion that we move that number to 250 people or less.
So is that saying that we're not having a police officer?
If you have 250 people or less, you don't have to have a peace officer there.
you can have one if you want one. There's nothing saying you can't have one. If you would like to have one, you may have one if you have 50 people
Is that
at your
It doesn't,
expense.
yeah, it doesn't preclude you
It
from
doesn't
hiring
keep
an
you from
officer.
having one, it's
Just a
just saying you don't
requirement.
It's just not
have
making
to
it
have one.
mandatory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I checked with that city around, that's about our size, and they don't put the peace officer expense on the city, they put it on the renter, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, and that's
It
what
is on the
is.
renter right now.
Yeah.
Okay, and then a minimum of 4 hours at $40 an hour. So,
Well, I mean, the individual event would determine the cost, or the policy would determine the pay. Right now, I have a motion on the table. Am I going to get a second for it?
I'll second it. I hate to agree with Terry, but I will.
Thanks, Wayne.
So Gunner has motioned to accept it with 250, and Bell has seconded it. Let's see. Heffley?
Nay.
Bates?
okay.
Gunner?
Aye.
Bell?
Aye.
Love?
I'm going to say nay just because of the number. I think we need to increase the number, but I will entertain it again. I think we need to bump the number up. So I'm going to say no on 250 though. That's
Higgins.
too small.
Nay.
So it's a nay on the number?
Yeah. I did.
Okay, well, and since it's an A on the number, I don't know if we can read it. We can entertain a motion for a different number.
I'll make a motion at 400 people.
Okay, so Jason makes a motion at 400. Do I have a second for 400? Anybody? All right, so that motion fails.
I'll make a motion for 200. Let's go up at,
That's going.
You want to go down?
No, it's at 150 right now.
Materials at 250.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, making a new motion for 200.
Well, I'll second that.
Okay, Higgins makes one at 200. Gunner seconds it at 200. Oh, Lord, my paper's getting too small. Heffley?
Aye.
Aye. Bates?
Aye.
Gunner?
Aye.
Bell?
Aye.
Love?
No.
No?
No.
Okay, hang on. Higgins?
Aye.
Okay, so now we have a 5-1 at 200. We'll change that number to 200. So anything 200 or less is not required a peace officer. I'm going to veto this and bring it back.
It's 50 people is how we're changing it. That's not a big difference.
So it'll come back to you. So as of right now, it's not changed. All right, thank you.
Can we continue to discuss this?
Yes.
or- So let's kind of, if we're going to have to revisit this, let's everybody think of a number, and the reason why we think it would be a good number. I'm going high because, like Clyde was saying, some of these parties get big, and it's kind of a nuisance to these people, and when they have these big weddings and stuff, and that's the only reason I'm shooting high. And I can understand. I mean, I can understand them not wanting a police officer back there in the back with the pictures and all that stuff. But we need to come together as a group and decide. I mean, because we can sit here and just whittle it down over 50 people. I mean, all we did is basically change it over 50 people.
I disagree just a little bit, because right now it reads, if you have 150 or less, which means 10, you still have to have one peace officer. 150 and more is 2, and up it goes. This says if you have 200, what we just proposed
Right.
was 200 or less, you have to have none.
Okay.
So that, to me, is a huge experiment.
Okay. No,
I'm just saying.
I'm listening. I'm open. That's
yeah,
the reason why I
yeah.
want to see
Yeah,
where everybody is on
because the
numbers.
way it reads right now is if the estimated attendance is 150 persons or less, one certified peace officer is required. 151 to 299, two
Right,
peace
right.
officers are required. 300 persons, 3. So we're basically changing that to say 200 or less, none are required.
Correct.
That's huge.
Okay, well,
We've gone to,
I'm going to throw this
Yeah.
in. When we did Jim Bowie Rodeo, we sold beer, Chamber of Commerce sold beer on the porch. No officer was required, all night long. No officer was required. They rolled it inside those roll-up doors, and officers required. What is the difference?
Jim
That
Bowie
is
Day
exactly
still
how
provided
community center,
officers, though.
it doesn't matter. That is exactly how the community center employees are seeing this. Bert, Clyde, and Guy are seeing this. You can sell it on the porch, you don't require a police officer. You sell it in the building, you got to require a police officer. That is where the conflict is coming about. You can rent the pool and serve alcohol to 100 people. You don't have to have a peace officer.
Well,
You
excuse
can
me,
rent the
Mayor.
Green Pavilion.
Excuse me, but in my opinion, I think we're all aware of the situation, of what's going on out there. We brought a number together. We voted on it. So to me, I think it's irrelevant at this time. I mean,
That's not true, because Jason opened the floor for conversation.
and she explained exactly what the situation
I
was
just
there.
want to hear what everybody. I just want
Yeah.
to see where everybody's filling out what number they're looking at. I mean, that's so.
Well, I just think, I mean, personally, I was 250. I wasn't
Right.
really happy what I said about that, but I was tickled to death that we dropped down to 200. But especially with I did understand that we weren't going to have an officer at all there. That was the whole purpose.
Right.
And to be honest with you, I asked some citizens about it, and I think they're going to feel more comfortable with the decision that we made today, and that's why I'm here, is to help citizens and the whole situation. I think we made a good decision, and I don't think we need to argue about it. I think,
Right. No, I'm not.
I understand. I'm just saying that, just want to make sure that we're clear that I think everybody understood what they voted on, so.
My whole issue with it is, I've kicked it around in my head for many, many days and tried to figure out what was best. I mean, I understand the frustration with the department heads, but it only takes one time, and that's what kept coming back in my mind. It only takes one time for something to go wrong, and I want to make it as easy as possible for everyone and still be safe. But it's my business to prepare people for the worst thing that could happen. And it bothers me a little bit not to have someone there, an authority, when people are
Right.
drinking. It just takes one time. That's my hang up with doing
No, I
away
feel the
with it.
same. That's the reason why I kind of stepped back and wanted to let our department heads make the decision, because that's their job.
Right.
First of all, they're on the front lines. They see that stuff every day. And just see what happens. And I mean, I hope nothing bad happens out there, obviously, but
Right.
I think we should just try to step back and kind of let them do their job and see if that's what they're telling us and they're recommending it to us. I think we should step in there and do it. It's just the number I think we're getting held up on. So, but I agree with you 100%. It's kind of hard to kind of step back because I've been out there before at the parties, and some of them get kind of crazy. But you're just like, why do we want to not leave a police officer out here? But you know, I'm just putting it in their trust. So I'm putting the trust in them. So.
I respect that.
Well, if nobody else is going to make a motion for any kind of, on this topic again, then it'll just have to come back to you. But if anybody wants to make a motion, I'll entertain it. If not, I'm going to move it on. So the next one on the agenda is the new business. Let me find my next paperwork for this. Ordinance 2021-09, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bowie, Texas, ordering a special and general election to be held on the second day of November 2021 for the purpose of adopting or rejecting proposed amendments to the Bowie, Texas Home Rule City Charter and selling parkland known as Richwood Hills Lake Estates Park, concurrent with the general election for the city council members, authorizing the Montague County Elections Administrator to officially conduct the November 2nd, 2021 general and special election, setting forth council positions and terms, establishing regular and early voting places, and establishing an effective date. That was a mouthful. So this covers all the new changes to the charter, plus the election. All the charter changes are in your packet.
Plus the selling of the parkland.
Yes, plus the selling of the parkland. Did everybody get the corrected copy this afternoon? There was one change in the wording on, which section was that? It was, I don't have it highlighted. We changed it, which one? Okay, yeah. It was Che contacted us and said we needed to reflect more of the state law. Pull your microphone down and tell them what it was you changed.
The only thing that I changed, what we did is we took out lowest bidder and just added best value. But in accordance to the statute, it's kind of and or. So in accordance to statute, it's the lowest bidder or to the bidder who provides goods and services at the best value. So essentially what I want to do is reincorporate the lowest bidder as well as best value and how it complies with the state rules and regulations. So initially when we looked at it, we're swapping those words out, but I want to incorporate that word back in there and kind of have it lowest bid and or best value in accordance to the state.
And the state law reads exactly what it was I believe that the committee was after, It just gives a little bit more definition to it.
I didn't want to put code specific because it can change over time. So that's why I said just in regards to state. In the code, it actually does the list of what would be as far as be considered, as far as being best value. But anyway, I left it a little open so that way it's kind of a living document. So that way laws change, as things change. We don't have to redo this based on whatever the law changes.
Any questions, any comments? Anybody have any questions about the ordinance, the charter issues that you? Do what? Oh, yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Hi, Dana. Yes, as a resident of the Ridgewood Hills Estates up there, how come this wasn't, we weren't informed of what was happening to that part here?
Let's see. The city owns the land, and so when the council decides to do something with it, it's voted on by the city voters.
The city, will go to a vote of the citizens?
Yes, it goes to a vote of the citizenry to determine whether or not they want to sell the parkland. So the decision that to sell it is going to the ballot.
Oh, good.
But that comes from, that decision will be made by registered city voters, not by the residents out at the lake, because you don't encompass this, we don't encompass you into the registered voters. You won't have a vote on it, is what I'm saying.
Oh, but I also have to ask.
That's not in our, that's not in our city limits. And we were talking about this on how, with the kindest way to say this is, it's the city, I hate it for it to sound like that, but we answer to the citizens. So it will go to the citizens because they actually, the city of Bowie actually owns it.
I was just surprised.
Now you guys can get together and buy it after we put it on the market.
That's a flood zone.
That is true.
I stayed it up to the road.
So, but it will go to the voters of the city of Bowie to determine whether or not to sell it or to keep it.
So what was the city's intent with that property when they?
A long time ago, I'm told that it was, and I think you had something to do with this, it
The
was,
city owned the property, and it was, part of the property that we bought for the lake, and at the time, of course, we knew there was a flood zone. At the time, we didn't make it parkland. Subsequent to purchasing the property, one of the councils came along and made it a park. And once they designated area as a park, you have to turn around and let the voters vote on whether to sell it or not. Originally, we kept the property, we sold a bunch of property around the lake, but we kept that property for the city employees to use, to go out there and enjoy that, as long as they kept it clean and fixed it up and stuff. That worked for a while, but then after a while, they got in arguments over who did what, and who tore up what, or who fixed it, and so nobody uses it now, and so there's no reason to keep it. The city, having a second park at Amon Carter is kind of foolish in a way, because, we've got funding for Selma Park and we do work there, but this area is a flood zone. It's, you can't do anything there. Anything that you put there is going to get flooded. So, and some of the residences that live out there, own property next to it, are very interested in buying it, so that's where this came from. Hello.
yes, sir.
And the police have to respond to that part.
Yes,
Exactly.
they do.
Way out.
So that is the reasoning for selling it. As far as you guys being made aware of it, it would only be done through the newspaper or probably the reports of the city council meeting.
Understandable, thank you.
Thank you.
Is it going to be an open bid, or how's it going to be?
As far as I know, it'd be sold by sealed bid.
Yeah, we have to take bids on it. We just can't pick somebody and sell it, so.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions on this item? If not, then let's entertain a motion to accept all this as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Heffley.
I'll second. Go ahead.
Bates? Gunner?
Aye.
Love?
Aye.
Bell?
Aye.
Higgins?
Aye.
Bates? Heffley?
Aye.
Cool. All right, what everybody's been waiting for. Presentation of the draft of the 2021-2022 City of Bowie municipal budget. Bert's going to talk to you long about this.
This may take 4 or 5 hours, so y'all get ready. You what?
Let us have that one.
No.
Thank you.
First thing first, this is a draft budget. It's not a final budget, so remember that as I go through this. Some highlights of the budget to start off with, and then I'll go through the budget and give you some highlights page by page later on. There's a 3% salary increase figured into this budget. There is a bucket truck for the electric department with possible financing for that. There's going to be a backhoe for the water department, possible financing, and I'm going to meet with our financial advisor, Government Capital, Friday, and we'll talk about that, and I'll have that information for you later on. So you'll know the Vector truck that we bought a couple of years ago, we figured out after a while that Stoney and his guys just have a tremendous amount of problem with it because it's too big. And come to find out they have a truck that's smaller, more versatile, can turn around in a shorter area. And so we're going to swap the smaller truck, the big truck for a smaller truck. And that's going to cost us some money, but not a whole lot. It also includes a part-time position with benefits in the administration department for the EOC, which is the Emergency Operations Center Coordinator. There'll be a new patrol position in the police department, 2 new mowers in the Parks Department, and a sweeper for the community center. There's also some allowances in the budget for high service pumps at the water plant, which has been a long time since they've been rebuilt and replaced and stuff, and so we're going to look at that. And there's also the police department wants some rifles for their special operations team that they formed. So those are some highlights. On page 2 of your budget.
Let's see.
If you'll look at the top of the page, where it says sewer there, $1,463,426. That's the first interest payment on the Texas Water Development loan. A little down a little ways, there's a debt payment there of $272,000. That's the payment on the water meters that's bought every how many years ago. And then capital expenditures of $770,436. That includes items on the utility fund, capital items on page 35. So that coincides with page 35 if you reference that. I would suggest just taking notes now and look at it later. Be a little easier. On page 3, I just point some things out to you. Our water taps have been growing by leaps and bounds. If you look at the current year projected, we had budgeted $30,000, and current year projected is $52,600. Actually, Stoney and I were talking the other day, and he says it's closer to $60,000. But we've under budgeted that and I want the council to know that we've under budgeted that just to make sure that we don't budget too much for it. The same thing goes in the sewer revenues below that. On the sewer taps, the current year projected is $25,000, and we're only budgeting $18,000. So we're being a little cautious there on some things. On page 7, there's the interest on a note on account number 67042, $204,322. That amount includes, with amongst other things, the Texas Water Development Board payment. The first payment we make to them is all interest, so this is that plus a few other things. So just want you to make you aware of those things. On page 10, You're showing a deficit of $1,288,040 for the general fund summary, and a transfer of $1,250,000, which pretty much reduces that to not zero, but, you know, we're awful close to it, so, but anyway, I wanted you to notice that. And of course, the $1,250,000 transfer out of the utility fund into that. On page 11, for the ad valorem tax, if we leave our tax values have gone up, wasn't it 26 million, I believe, working off the top of my head, something like that. If we leave that the same, we'll collect our tax rate the same. We'll collect about another 140,000 in taxes, of which we direly need. The $1,896,585, we always budget at 98% of our tax value, and that's what that number is. Also notice the delinquent taxes and penalty and interest. We've grossly under budgeted there for revenue for the same reason a while ago. We're just being cautious because you don't know what will happen as you go. But that extra $140,000 will come in handy when we start, you know, spending money on things that we need. On page 13, which is the administration, there's in the salaries, there's an extra $21,216, which includes the emergency management coordinator salary. And down at the bottom, under emergency management, of that $32,500, $24,479 is the payment for the sirens that we bought last year, year before, whenever that was. And so there's another remaining $8,021 in that for incidentals. On page 14, under equipment, account 64400, that $135,620 includes the rifles for the special op team. And something I'd kind of like to do this time, and Stoney kept kicking me in the head verbally, saying when we go through this stuff, you know, we don't talk about what kind of revenue these departments bring in. We just talk about the expenses as far as the budget goes or whatever. Anyway, and I'll further explain this later, but the police department revenue from fines runs $80,000 a year. I know that they spend a lot of money, but we also have revenue coming in for some of the things that they do. On page 16, fire department, nothing unusual there, and to bring out the fire and ambulance revenue, the county pays us $75,000 for the fire department and ambulance, and then the ambulance fees, we collect about $1.1 million. So we have substantial revenue there coming in from the fire department and their actions. Something that you need to note, and the first place I caught it, and I'll tell you, it's like, you'll see like at the top of page 18 for salaries, there's 5.25 full-time employees. Well, what is a quarter of an employee? That Stoney is paid out of the fire department. I'm not the fire department, I'm sorry. The street department, the airport, the water department, and the sewer department. He handles a quarter of each one of those things, so his salary comes out of all four of those departments. And that appointment saves us a lot of money from last year, so he does not only does a good job, but he saves us money too. Take a bow. Sanitation department. This is sanitation. Basically, is we just contract for the garbage service. If you'll notice, there's $1,033,000 in expenses. Well, we take in $1,046,500. So that's a net gain in that department. So you see those expenses, but you don't see the revenue, and that's one of the things I want to point out to you. On page 21, the revenue from fines for the Mississippi Court, the police department, and the municipal court share in that $80,000 in fines. In the airport, again, notice 1.25 employees full-time. So Stoney is a quarter of an employee here. The revenue that the airport brings in, $80,000 on fuel and $68,500 on hangar rent. So that's $148,500 that we bring in revenue from the airport. So it's not revenue neutral, but it pays a lot of its own way. The code compliance, the revenue from that runs about $22,000 a year in permit fees and things like that. So it's just something to think about. The rest of these are pretty much self-explanatory as far as it goes. The community center rental brings in about $30,000 a year, and the tickets for the concerts brings in about 20, so about $50,000 a year that comes in from the community center. Second Monday, trade days, the revenue for that runs about $130,000 a year, so that's where a lot of the money for the Parks Board goes for them to spend on the parks. On page 33, this is the equipment purchase improvements program. If you'll notice, if they each item on here, if it has a date by it, that's the date that the note is paid off. There's some things that we've paid cash for. Cameras and radio for the police department is just an example. But this year, the rifles for the special operations team at $10,400 is on that, and that's for the general fund. And also, included in that is we borrowed money 2 years ago or 2 years ago for the runway rehab deal, and there's a $26,111 for that. So, and we still hadn't gotten that work done. The state is dragging their feet. Stoney and I made a trip last year. Stoney jumped up and down on their table almost. Not really.
Third week in August.
Yeah, third week in August. They say they're going to start work on it. So we'll see. In page 35, there you can see the high service pump and their cost. The backhoe that we discussed, the new Vector trade at $47,000 is what it's going to cost to trade, and the T6 All-Tech bucket truck for the electric department. Other things that we need, and it's not on this list, and I'm just going to tell you all that there's, when you're putting together a budget, you have to think about what you really need. We built the electric substation in probably 91, I'm thinking. We have 2 transformers out there, and you never know when one of them's going to blow up. I mean, we've serviced them very well. Jay has done a heck of a job of keeping them good, but we need a third one, and they're $1.5 million. There's going to be a point in time when, just for safety's sake, that we put a third transformer in there so we can switch. We always run on 2, and so we can, take one offline and give it a rest, put another one online and stuff. So that's something for you to think about. Also, I talked to you a while ago about the police station remodel. That's going to run us probably $750,000 to $850,000. And I got a phone call from the architect, and his architect fees were double what they were for this building. So it just kind of blew my mind, and I called him on it, and he said, well, it's more complicated, basically what he said. So we're still negotiating that to see how much that's going to cost. Anyway, on page 36, under the proposed tax rate structure, at the same tax rate, without raising our tax rate, we're gonna collect about $140,000 more in taxes. We need that money, so. Any questions? Please go over it, become familiar with it, and bring your questions when we have the meeting after our next scheduled council meeting. I know that tonight is the first time you've seen it, but we've worked, what now, 3 weeks on it? Something like that. Carrie has done a fantastic job of putting it together for us, and we need to, we appreciate what she's done, so done a good job.
Anybody have any questions for him tonight? This is why I said, be prepared for an extended meeting next Monday night, so bring all your questions for the workshop after the meeting. Well, if not, let's move on to public comments if we have any. Oh, wait, did I leave something out? Wait. We gotta set a public hearing.
Oh, yeah.
Forgot about that. So our public hearing will be on August the 9th. Is that what I'm looking at? Yeah. Oh, wait, I've already organized all my papers and ready to walk out the door. So we'll set a public hearing for the proposed budget as of August the 9th. We should have most of all the finalized numbers we need by then, we hope. Don't we, Carrie? So by August the 9th, we should have all the numbers we need to.
I'm hoping so. We are, and he did not mention that, but the only thing that we're definitely waiting on for sure is the definite numbers for the health insurance rebate. So I figured in 10% in there, but it's kind of looking like it's probably going to be over that. So that's the only thing that might cause us a little bit of an issue.
And the 3% increases across the board. Is that correct for everyone? 3% payroll increase across the board like we did
Pretty
last year?
close, yeah. I gave the department heads some latitude to divide up that 3% in
Yes, sir.
their department as they saw fit.
Yeah, we discussed that last year, though. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. The tallies come out to that amount.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, well, now let's go to public comments. What? No. Let's take a vote, guys. Take the vote. I have a motion on the floor for August 4th. Do I have a motion for August the 9th as a public hearing?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Higgins. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Bates? Heffley?
Aye.
Gunner? Bell?
Aye.
Love?
Aye.
Higgins?
Aye.
Bates?
Aye.
Now we're done. Now you may have the floor, Ms. Durham.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Finally.
I would just like to applaud you for such a healthy discussion on the alcohol issue. And for those of you who are stating your conscience, I'd like to remind you that you're in a neighborhood, you're actually in my neighborhood, and we have tons of kids in that neighborhood. So it only takes one drunk driver to change everything. And I always post on Facebook, you never know, social drinking is harmless until you bury your kid brother. And then it's no longer harmless. So the comment that I think it was over in this area, I just applaud you so much. That's one issue. The other one is I just don't understand why the city has to be in the alcohol business. And I understand that from drinkers there's going to be resistance. I get that. But why are we even involved in it? We have lots of private venues in our community that are well managed, and they can go other places if that's what they want to do. So I'd just like to plant that thought with you. And the other issue is I noticed in the budget, and I know that it's extremely detailed, I hear a lot about spending, but I don't hear too much about paying down our debt. And the debt is increasing. So I just want to plant that thought to you, and thank you so much.
Okay, let's, I don't need to tell y'all who I am. Everybody knows who I am. I'm gonna start this out by saying I'm 8 years sober. I've been on both sides of this alcohol issue. The city is not in the alcohol business. You're in the venue business and you rent out the venue. Now, if I'm correct, I can go out and rent Meyer Park, pay my $10 to rent the pavilion, and I can put 500 people up underneath that pavilion drinking all day long, and nobody wants me to have a cop out there. That's the difference in this. Do I understand the fact that alcohol can fuel tempers sometimes? Yeah, like I said, I used to be a drinker. But I also know that the concerts I've gone to at the community center or at the event center, it's a 90-minute concert. You're there 2 hours. You got to be pounding some 12-ounce curls to get enough beer in your belly to get really out of control at an event within the city event center. Should there be a number on it? Sure, there probably should, but I go to them and I do not drink. So if you're going to say, okay, we gotta have a cop for every 150, don't count me in that, because you can just knock it down to 149 because I'm not drinking. So how many of those people standing in there that you're going to count are not drinkers? And like I said, I see both sides of it, and I know the dangers in drunk driving and everything else. It don't matter whether you're selling it at the community center, if you're selling it at the rack, if you're selling it at the liquor store. I got a liquor store in my community too. Guy, you going to plant somebody at UR Liquor so that we can make sure nobody drunk drives from there? It's ridiculous to start pointing out these pinpointing stuff. Our police officers do their job. Let them do it. Period. No matter what part of town you're in. They can get all the way out to Selma Park. They can get to the event center. Period. Quit micromanaging our cops. Let them do their job. Rent out the community center for whatever it wants to be. I mean, and if you want to put a number on it, okay, I get that. But don't make it so minute that the police are going to have to stand down there for Billy Joe Jim Bob's 5th birthday party because Dad might be drinking a beer, but you can't have it 1,000 people. That's going to be a 6-hour event either. But you got to figure, alcohol is the key word here. You can talk to 500 people in this town, and depending on whether they're standing in front of their preacher or standing in front of me, what answer they're going to give you on how they feel about alcohol. We had this battle when alcohol first got voted into Bowie. But it got voted in, didn't it? But a whole lot of people wouldn't have stood their ground and told you face to face, but they sure did it at the ballot box. I get it, folks. Alcohol can be a bad thing. So can chocolate. An addiction is addiction, period. But not everybody that drinks a beer is going to have a problem with it or cause a problem. All my years of drinking, I never once got in trouble with guys' cohorts because of alcohol. Probably should have a couple times, but I didn't. So don't make it the demon in all of this. Set the rules, and you better make them consistent through everything. Because if I can go hold a concert at Meyer Park with 500 people drinking, city ain't getting my money to rent out the event center. I'm going to pay $10 for that pavilion. Thank you.
Well, I basically would like to ditto what Dylan said, but on the other side of things with what Glenda said. If you take the alcohol out of the venues, that's putting the customers over at the rack. That's taking money from the city and giving it to Tawny Jones over at the rack. So if you want to take the alcohol out of the community center, then you need to close down the alcohol stores here in town. You need to close down the bar here in town. You're going to be losing revenue, where does that make sense? I get where some people have issues with alcohol. I get the drunken driver and burying your brother or your sister or your mother. I get those things. I used to be a bartender for over 10 years. I served these people. And I know where if there is, give me a second. You have to put the trust in the people that are bringing in the alcohol, that they're going to be mature people. I mean, you cannot be a mind reader on how the people are going to be. So you could have an alcoholic that's going to be at a venue, but you could also have someone that has a complete mental health issue that's going to be more of a detriment to society than somebody that's getting out on the road that had a beer or two. So I want you guys to think about that the whole thing is if you take the alcohol out of it, then you're taking away revenue. You can go to a different venue, you can say no alcohol is allowed here. Well, then you're going to wind up losing that revenue because they went to that different venue, which makes absolutely no sense. Thanks.
Anybody else? All right, well, I appreciate everybody attending tonight. We'll close tonight's meeting at 7 o'clock exactly.
Or they just drive in a car for it and drunk drive home.
What's the deal here?